Early in the driving rain, found John's out hitting on the liquor again. It wasn't too late, about 10:30 when he let loose with the cat dragged in. It was a Sunday. And then morning came in, morning when he tried to make me pay the rent. Said, I ain't got no money for you, can I pay my way with these dancing shoes? Thought I was kidding. Brother, brother, what you owe me, I can't count on anymore, till the police come and knocking on our door. We'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground, burn it up, tear it down, burning down the house. Well, I spent some time in a backwoods town, ain't nothing to do 'cause there ain't nothing around. Deputy sheriff ran around the block, but the streets are empty and the doors are locked. Got pretty lonely. There, king rang my bell, told me a little about heaven and a lot about hell. Said, I ain't got no money for you, can I pay my way with these dancing shoes? Thought I was kidding. I was not kidding. Father, Father, what you owe me, I can't count on anymore, till the angels come and knocking on our door. We'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground, burn it up, tear it down, burning down the house. Woo. Outside is mad and cold. You don't grow up, you just grow old. Soon it's over, so they say, but God Almighty, till that day, we'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground, burn it up, tear it down, burning down the house. We'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground. Tear it down, burning down the house.
Let me tell you a little something about me. When it's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I've been holding it in since the clock came Monday morning. From the end of the week, I'm about to blow. We're walking to the honky tonk like a pack of wolves now. Order up around the shots and it's away we go. Let's just go down, get down. Order up another round of shots. Run, get drunk, get some, have fun. Get into some trouble, baby, like in a night. I'm a gym, been drinking, big, singing, la 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 la, dancing machine. Been a hell of a week and I need to blow off some steam. Look at those. Got to blow off some steam for blow up. I got to blow off some steam for blow up. I've been holding it in through the homework week. Now it's Saturday night and I'm about to blow. So come on now, man, let me play me none of them slow songs. I need boots, scooting, bar, burning, hell, raising, get up and go songs. So give me something hot, just give me all you got. Now let's give old Luke Miller a try. Go ahead. Well, let's just go down, get down, order up another round of shots. Try to get drunk, get some, have fun, get into some trouble, baby, like it or not. I'm a Jim Beam, drinking beer, singing la 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 la, dance machine. Been a hell of a week, and I need to blow off some steam. Got to blow off some steam for blow up. I got to blow off some steam for blow up. I got to blow off some steam for blow up. I got to blow off some steam for blow up. I've been holding it in through the whole work week. Now it's Saturday night and I'm about to blow. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam.
Everyone on DLMS, so we're about 5 to 8 minutes away from showtime here. We do appreciate everyone being with us as we bring coverage of the Calgary Stampede Junior Steer Classic, broadcast here from Olds, Alberta for 2021. Thank you guys very much for being with us. So we'll move through the show today. If you got questions, that chat window's there. Have a little bit of fun. Cassidy and I will be on it here today. We do appreciate everyone being with us as we bring you Calgary Stampede and the Junior Steer Classic for 2021.
wait to see your golden smile, feel of 1,000 kisses. Oh, please stay a while. I reach up to hold your sunlit face. Feels like a handful of silk now. I'm in your warm embrace. Oh, I hope this feeling lasts till the oceans turn to glass and the world around us turns and fades to black. Together we'll hold back the sun in this moment, forever young. Against the stream of time we'll run, baby. We'll hold back the sun. This feeling moves me every single day. I'm captured by your charm, enchanted by your ways. In the magic of your eyes, I've become lost in their spell. So come closer, my dear, because all is well. Oh, I hope this feeling lasts till the oceans turn to glass and the world around us turns
So everybody joining us on DLMS, we want to thank you guys very much for being with us. We're going to be going here shortly. We see some steers lined up. We've got our judge. We've got everything coming together for Calgary Stampede 2021. This is the Junior Steer Classic Show.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2021 Junior Steer Classic Show. Thank you for attending. We're ready to begin our show. And at this time, as we prepare to bring in the first class, I'd like to have you help me welcome our judge of the day, the adjudicator today, Mr. Colton Hamilton. Colton is part of Belvin Angus, a family-owned and operated operation east of Bowden. Colton works alongside his parents, Gavin and Mabel, as well as his sister and brother-in-law, Quinn and Brendan Elliott. Belvin Angus currently runs 350 purebred Angus cows. They calve in 2 calving windows from January to February and in May, June. Belvin Angus hosts a bull sale every March on the first Tuesday of the month, and Belvin Angus also hosts a female sale every other year, with a sale being held this October the 29th. Colton has shown and fit cattle across North and South America, and he's judged cattle shows in every part of Canada from BC to PEI, as well as in Europe. Certainly a young man that's grown up in the Canadian cattle industry and has a wealth of experience. Thank you for sharing your day. Welcome to the ring, Mr. Colton Hamilton. So we welcome to our ring class number 1, these steers weighing from 1045 to 1195. They're led in by show number 21, Hannah Kemp from Innisfail, Alberta, and her steer Hank. Followed by show number 39, Carson Van Sickle from Red Deer County with Blackjack. followed by show number 24 entry, Jaron Lehman from Lashburn, Saskatchewan, and her steer Tundra. Entry 18 is the entry from Emily Hopp of Langdon, Alberta, and her steer Gilbert. Show number 16 is the entry from Bailey Hasty of Langley, BC, and her steer Benny. Rounding out this first group, show number 28, Kate Nielsen from Alameda, Saskatchewan, and her steer Jose. First class, ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 entries. The steers once again. The lightest steer, 1045, your first steer in the ring, and the heaviest steer in this split, the last steer to enter the ring, weighing 1195. And at this time, I'd also like to introduce to you our ring personnel working the ring today for our judge, Colton Hamilton. And so doing the ring, we're fortunate to have with us Mr. Scott Borison, Katie Songer, and Megan Black. Let's have a round of applause and welcome those 3 individuals to our ring as well. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have comments from Judge Colton Hamilton on the first split of steers.
Well, just before we get started, I would just like to thank the committee here for asking me and giving me the opportunity to be here and judge for these steers today. It really is an honor for me to be here, and with the prestige of this event and the difficult, trying year that it's been, it is really exciting for me to be here. We're going to start off here with our lightweight class of steers. I think two steers we're going to lead off with here. Steers that they do have an ample amount of finish for them. They're not overly heavy steers, but given their frame size, and they do have enough finish for them. The steer we're going to lead off with, really like this steer over his top. He's really expressive. He's got a lot of forerib to him. He's got a lot of shape through his top. He's got some hip to him. He's not the longest bodied steer we're going to find, but I think he's soft made. He handles himself well. Just a really complete steer. The steer that we've got in second, a really impressive steer in terms of his hip. He's really bold through his hip. Where he maybe falls behind this leadoff steer, he's just not quite as strong over his loin, up in through his forerib. But I think a steer really appreciate just for the overall muscle that he has. Again, a steer that handles himself well, a really impressive calf. Young lady with the steer here in third, a steer that's eye-appealing when you get him on the profile. You just get behind again. He's not quite as powerful down through his stifle compared to the two steers above him. He doesn't quite have the shape to his top. I think a steer definitely, again, he handles himself well. Just a steer that doesn't quite have the overall muscle and mass to him, the two steers above him. Young man with the next black steer here had a bit of trouble coming in, but he did a good job. Held on to his steer and kept showing him here. I think this is a nice made steer. I think he's a steer. He's got some top to him. Just like to see a little bit more middle third to him. Just like to see him have a little bit more down through his flank. But a nice steer. A young lady with the next black-white face. Taller made steer, a bit different type of steer. I think we appreciate him for the length of body that he has. I think just to get any higher in this class today, I like to see him just a little more expressive over his hip. Just like to see him have a little bit more lower quarter. A young lady that rounds out the class. Steer, he's just needing a little bit more time here yet. A steer that you do appreciate. He's got some eye appeal to him. Just like to see a little bit more finish to him, a little bit more muscle and mass. But nice steer here in the lighter weight division to get the show started.
Thank you, Colton. So first in class was show number 24, Jaron Lehman from Lashburn, Saskatchewan, and her steer Tundra. Second in class was number 16, Bailey Hasty from Langley, BC, with Benny. Third in class was entry 28, Kate Nielsen. Fourth was 39, Carson Van Sickle. Fifth in class, entry 18, Emily Hopp. Sixth in class, entry 21, Hannah Kemp. We move now to Group 2. We'll have 7 entries in this class, and they're led in by entry 27, Spencer McMillan from Hanna, Alberta, with Wasabi. Followed in by show number 5, Casey Brokenshire from Estevan, Saskatchewan, with Peanut. Entry 7, the entry from Lauren Boost of Waldeck, Saskatchewan, Lil Wayne. Followed by entry 15, McKenna Goodfellow from Neilburg, Saskatchewan, and her steer Home Run. Entry 35, the entry from Covey Simmons of Claresholm, Alberta, and steer Benji. Entry 12 is the entry from Ramsey Fleesick of Neilburg, Saskatchewan, and steer Dippy. And show number 44 is Kaylee Budovisky-Nye with WR Blitz. Kaylee is from Beaver County. Ladies and gentlemen, your second split of junior steers. They weigh from 1205 to 1265. So the first steer entering the ring, 1205. The last steer, 1,265 pounds. Split 2 of junior steers.
downtown L.A. When I met her on an elevator on its way up to the hotel room of my fiancée. But I never made it there, 'cause she come tearing through my life like a tornado, coming on hotter than a baked potato. She spin me around and see you later. Want to hate her, but I love her instead. We caught the red eye to Dubai. She was blowing through my door like a throwing out style. In general, I was a sensible guy, but that guy died when she come tearing through my life like a tornado, coming on hotter than a baked potato. She spin me around and see you later. Want to hate her, but I love her instead. Go. Well, I lost my job and all of my money, most of my friends and half of my mind. So messed up, it's a little funny, and I thought for sure that she was mine. But now I'm alone, just trying to get it right, picking up the pieces of my busted life. If she walked into this room tonight, I'd say, baby, won't you come tearing through my life like a tornado, coming on hotter than a baked potato. She spin me around and see you later. Wanna hate her, but another instead. I wanna hate her, but another instead.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share with you that we're honored today to have 4 board members from the Calgary Stampede with us here today. It's excellent to have these board members here: Carrie Griffith, Dave Lance, Paul Cavanaugh, and Tracy Zeal. All 4 board members in attendance today, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll pass on a hello to them when you get an opportunity. Also, been informed, we're very fortunate to have with us today the Agriculture and Western Events Manager from Calgary Stampede, Jeanette McMillan, is here with us today as well. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to these board members from the Stampede that make all the Calgary Stampede events possible. Ladies and gentlemen, now comments on Group 2 of the junior steers, Judge Colton Hamilton.
Well, this class here, second class, I think we really, upped the ante proverbially here with these top 3 steers, really the whole way through the class. The steer we're going to start off with, really impressive individual when you get your hands on him. He's got the most finish of any of the steers here in the class. Really big loin to him, a lot of rib. He's got some hip to him. He's not as long-bodied as maybe the next 2 steers, but he does outweigh the steer in front of him. I think he's got a lot of muscle to him. Just a really solidly made steer. I think he's definitely getting on almost to the point where he'd be a little bit overfinished. He's not as fresh as a couple of steers above him, but still I think a steer we really appreciate just for doing a lot of things well and how well he does handle himself today. That's where he comes in over this steer that we have in second. The steer in second, real eye-appealing steer. You really like him up through his front end. Like to see maybe a little bit more base width to him. I think the steer really like the top to him. He doesn't quite have the lower quarter and the stifle that the steer that leads off the class does, and he also doesn't have the same degree of finish, but I think a really eye-appealing solid steer to come here in second. The same goes for the steer here in third, young man with the silver steer. He's probably the softest made steer in the class. He doesn't quite have as much shape through his rib, maybe not quite as strong over his top as the steer that leads off the class. And a steer of these top 3, he's probably got the least amount of finish of the top 3. But still, I think he's a steer. He does handle himself all right. I think a steer really appreciate for the hip that he has to him. An eye-appealing steer again as well. Young man here next with the Hereford steer. Steer really like this steer up through his top. He's really expressive in through his rib, over his loin. Where he maybe falls behind the steers above him, he's just down through his flank, down through his lower quarter. He just doesn't quite have the muscle and the expression to him. He's a really long-bodied steer, a really attractive steer up through his neck and through his shoulder. Again, just like to see him just a little bit stouter made through his lower third to get above the steers that beat him here today. Next young lady here with the speckled steer, I do really like this steer. I think a steer, he handles himself well. He's got some hip to him. He's got some top. There's just maybe not quite as much to him as the steer, especially that leads off the class, or the steer that we have in front of him here. I think definitely an eye-appealing steer, but again, a steer that maybe just doesn't quite have the lower third to him, the stifle to him, but a steer that we really appreciate for how attractive he is, how fresh he is. Doesn't quite have the same level of finish as the steer that's going to win the class. Young man with the next black steer here. I think this is one of the stronger top steers that we have in the class. I think where we just like to change this steer is in his hip structure. He just tends to tail off through his hip. If we could just level him out a little bit, if we could just free him up a little bit on his back legs when he gets moving. But I think a steer that we definitely appreciate him for the rib that he has and the shape that he has to his rib. The young lady that's going to round off the class, a little different style of steer. I think a steer definitely appreciate. He's got some growth to him. He's the heaviest steer in the class. He handles himself well enough. I think he just, you get comparing him to a couple of the steers above him. He just doesn't quite have the hip structure to him. He's not quite as attractive made, but definitely a good solid market steer here. Really excellent class here for our second weight class.
Thank you, Colton. And so in this second class, first place, we had show number 7, Lauren Boost from Waldeck, Saskatchewan, and her steer, Little Wayne. Second in class was show 5, Casey Brokenshire from Estevan, Saskatchewan, and her steer, Peanut. We'll see those two later. Third in class was at show number 35, Covey Simmons. Fourth in class was show number 12, Ramsey Fleesick. Fifth was 15, McKenna Goodfellow. Sixth in class, 27, Spencer McMillan. Seventh in class was number 44, Kaylee Zubodvisky-Nygren. We now move into split 3 of our steers. In this third split, they're led in by show number 19, Lily Howell from Penhold, Alberta, and her steer, Double D. Followed in by show number 38, Dakota Van Meter from Lloydminster, Alberta, and her steer, Raymond. Show number 1 is Allie Banks from Crossfield, Alberta, and her steer, Miller. Number 43 is Kyle Yaremko from St. Paul, Alberta, and his steer, Hornaday. Show number 2 is Kylie Berner from Verwood, Saskatchewan, and her steer, Tyson. Entry number 30 is Cord Phillips from Wassetna, Alberta, and his steer, Raymond. And show number 20 rounds out this class from Sadie Howell of Penhold, Alberta, and her steer, Genther. Our group 3 of steers, ladies and gentlemen, they are weighing from 1275 to 1315. So the first steer in the ring weighs 1275, and the last steer in this class was 1315. Split 3 of our junior steers. So ladies and gentlemen, an update to your program. An update, we actually only have 6 entries in this class, not 7. So the last steer that I had announced, show number 20, Sadie Howell, has been moved to the next class. We'll see Sadie racing in the next class. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been updated in attendance today. We're very fortunate to have some other dignitaries here from the Calgary Stampede. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the chair of the Livestock Committee, Kerry Gordon, is in attendance. As well, our vice chair, Brad Mason, and also the new CEO of the Calgary Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth. He'll be the new CEO as of September, Mr. Joel Cowley. Joel, thank you for being in attendance today. Joel is a past, very involved in agriculture and former president and CEO, ladies and gentlemen, of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So very exciting news for the Calgary Stampede to have Mr. Joel Cowley as the new CEO as of this September. Welcome, sir, and thank you for attending.
Indigo City, why do you get me down? Indigo City, kicking me to the ground. Now down in the cellar, lots of noise. Yeah, down in the cellar, lots of noise. Well, they keep on dancing, all the good girls and boys. And I can't stop to turn it off. No, I can't stop to turn it off. No, whisper something to you short and soft. So Indigo City, why do you get me down? Indigo City, kicking me to the ground. Indigo City, why do you get me down? Indigo City, kicking me to the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen, our official judge, Mr. Colton Hamilton, has adjudicated this third class, and now some comments on Split 3.
I think we got a little bit more variety in this class of steers. I think, especially our two steers at the top, a little bit different type of steers. I think we're going to lead off with this first steer. You analyze these two steers from the profile. I think he's a steer just a tick longer in his rib, a tick longer through his hip, maybe a little square through his hip. I think he's a steer. He's just, you put your hands on him, he's got enough cover to him, but the black steer in second does have a bit more cover, I think. But this first steer, I just really appreciate the balance to this steer. You analyze him from a profile, he just, you like him through his rib, you like him up through his forearm. Just a really solidly made, well-balanced steer. Steer in second, a really flashy steer. I think a steer really like the softness to him. Really like the top to him. Maybe doesn't quite have the stifle as the first place steer, and like I said at the outset, just maybe like to give him a tick more length in his hip to match up with this first place steer. I think there's a bit of a weight difference there between the two steers, and I think that weight's probably just coming from that extra little bit of length. But two really complete, really solid steers here lead off this class. Young man with the steer here in third, a steer, again, one that we really like as he profiles. He's an attractive made steer. He's got some thickness to his top. He just doesn't quite have the dimension through his hip as the two steers that beat him have. Just maybe doesn't quite have the shape to his lower rib, but still a solidly made steer. I think he complements the steer in second place quite well. A really solid steer for this young man. Young lady that's got the next steer, kind of a different style of steer in the class. I think as far as sheer muscle, he's definitely the heaviest muscled steer in the class by a decent margin. He's not as long-bodied as the two steers, or the three steers that are above him. I think he's a steer that you do like him for his shape. Maybe like to see him track a bit better on his back legs when he gets moving. Just maybe like to extend him a little bit more. But still, I think a steer, in terms of sheer muscle, really do appreciate this steer. next steer we have the red white-faced steer, a steer probably the as long-spined a steer as there is in the class. You just have him when he's walking towards you here. He just doesn't have the overall body shape and dimension to him as the steers that are above him. I think he's a steer that when you get your hands on him, he does handle well enough. Just a steer. We'd like to just see some more shape to him, some more shape down through his stifle, just a little bit more shape overall from one end to the other. Young lady with the steer that's going to close out the class. Steer, I like the hip in this steer. Just like to see him a little bit more flank, just like to soften this steer up a little bit. But still, I think a steer we appreciate for the hip that he has to him. Really solid group of steers here in our third weight class.
Thank you, Colton. And so in split 3, first place goes to number 30, Cord Phillips from West Setna, Alberta with Rayman. Second in class was entry 19, Lily Howell from Penhold, Alberta with Double D. Third in this split goes to 43, Kyle Yaremko. Fourth to show number 1, Allie Banks. Fifth in class, number 2, Kylie Berner. And sixth in class, 38, Dakota Van Meter. Now moving into the ring, we have split 4 of our junior steers. In your program, the final entry of split 3 has been moved up to this split, so that is show number 20, Sadie Howell from Penhold, Alberta, and her steer, Ginther. Followed in by entry 36, Allison Tetzlaff from Viscount, Saskatchewan, and her steer, Radar. Show number 33 is Lane Steen from Dundur, Saskatchewan, and his steer, Oreo. Show number 13 is Aubrey Fraser from Red Deer County, Alberta, and her steer, Harv. Show number 40 is Kaylee Wersta from Elk Point, Alberta, and her steer, Hoosier. Rounding out this class, entry 29, Riley Pashulka from Derwent, Alberta, and his steer, Hank. Steers in this class, first in weighing 1315, the last steer in weighing 1350. So the steers in this class weigh from 1315 to 1350. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call upon our one Stampede Board Director, Mr. Dave Lance, to come forward at your leisure. Dave, if you'd come forward, I believe has a few words to share with us. We'd appreciate that, Dave, so if you could come forward. Well, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to thank Mr. Dave Lance for being here today to represent the Board of Directors of the Calgary Stampede, and I'll turn the mic over to him.
Good day, everyone, and a pleasure and an honor to be here. It's good to see the kids back in the ring. It's been a long go. On behalf of the Stampede Board, and all of my peers down here, and Mr. Cowley, we're happy to be back. Glad to see everyone out today. It's truly an honor for us, and it's truly an honor for me to be the director responsible for this wonderful group, and just really good to see the kids back in the ring. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dave. And yeah, kudos to the Calgary Stampede for making sure that this junior show still went forward. It wasn't maybe going to be possible at the Calgary Stampede grounds this year, but they found a way to make it work, and thank you, Dave, for letting the kids get back in the ring. Also at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you to help me congratulate Carrie Harvey, and a very happy 35th birthday to Carrie today, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I'm a liar, I'm a boozer, I'm a bastard and abuser, and I'm wondering how much lower can I go? I've been beaten, I've been bloodied, I've been broken and betrayed, and I'm wondering how much lower can I go? Found her with another man. I was thrown into confusion. All the world I thought was true, it's nothing but illusion. So now I'm a liar, I'm a loser, I'm a bastard and abuser, and I'm wondering how much lower can I go? I've been beaten, I've been bloodied, I've been broken and betrayed, wondering how much lower can I go? Even though I know it's wrong, I wish my pain upon the world. I curse the lives of lucky men. Into this hell I hope they're hurled. I was once a good man. Now I'm living in this hell. 'Cause I'm a liar, I'm a boozer, I'm a bastard and abuser, and I'm wondering how much lower can I go? I've been beaten, I've been bloodied, I've been broken and betrayed, and I'm wondering how much lower can I go? So I'm wondering how much lower can I go?
And now comments on split 4 of our junior steers. Judge Colton Hamilton.
I think this class here is probably as solid of a class as we've had top to bottom. I think the steers kind of divide themselves into 3 pairs based on type. The 2 steers we got off at the top of the class, I really do like this black white face steer. He's long, he's one of the fresher steers in the class. He's got some hip to him, he's got some top to him. You get your hands on, he handles himself well. I think just again a really complete balanced steer. I think he's a steer that we just really appreciate him. I think maybe a little, the more I looked at him here in this class, I think just a really solidly made steer. Gets out and travels a little bit better than the steer in second. I think just a good solid steer at the top of the class. The steer in second, in terms of body type, composition, I think follows this first place steer the closest of any in the class in terms of his length of body, in terms of his hip and his stifle. I like the shape to him. He just maybe is not quite have the lower quarter to him and the stifle that the first place steer has. He's just maybe not as strong up through his forerib as the first place steer. But I think a steer we definitely appreciate. He's long-bodied, he's eye-appealing. A good compliment to our first place steer here. 2 young ladies have the next 2 steers. A little shift in style, I think, from the top 2 steers. Not quite as much length to them, not quite as much strength to their top and shape to their top. This black steer young lady, I really like him from the profile. He probably profiles as good as any steer in the class. He's soft-made, he's got some middle to him. Get behind him, he just doesn't quite have the shape through his hip that the steers that are leading off the class have. Is not quite as strong in through the lower quarter, but I think a steer definitely a steer we appreciate for his eye appeal, for the softness that he has. Same goes for the next young lady that's got this tan steer. I think steer, we like how balanced he is from one end to the other. I think he's a steer, again, he profiles extremely well. When you get in behind him, you look at him going from his loin up into his forerib, just not quite as much stoutness and thickness to him there. He doesn't maybe quite have the lower shape as some of the steers above him, but still I think a steer, like I said, a balanced steer. I think a steer that, again, complements this third place steer well, a different style pair of steers than the top 2 steers. Next, the 5th and 6th place steers are just steers structurally. We'd like to fix them up here today. This silver steer that's leaving the ring, I think a steer, as far as finish goes, he's got as much finish as any steer in the show. I think he's got some depth of rib to him. Just like to set his tail head into him. Just like to free him up as he travels. Steer that rounds out the class, again, like to free him up a little bit as he travels as well. I think this steer, in terms of just muscle and top, is as impressive as any steer in the class. You get your hands on him, he doesn't handle as well as the steers that we had up at the top of the class. But a really solid group here, one into the other in our 4th class.
Thank you, Colton. And first in this Group 4, first place goes to entry 40, Kaylee Wersta from Elk Point, Alberta, and her steer Hoosier. Second in class was entry 29, Riley Pashulka from Derwent, Alberta, and his steer Hank. Third in this split goes to entry 20, Sadie Howell. Fourth in class, 13, Aubrey Fraser. Fifth in class was 36, Allison Tetzlaff. And sixth in class, entry 33, Lane Steen. We now move to Group 5 of our junior steers, and they're led in by entry 37, Wasey Townsend from Lacombe County, Alberta, and his steer Papa Hall. Followed in by entry 17, Lyndon Hasty from Langley, BC, and his steer Jet. Entry 32 comes from Eric Smith of Mancota, Saskatchewan, and his steer Diesel. Show number 42 is Emily Yaremko from St. Paul, Alberta, and her steer Hondo. Show number 6 is the entry from Cooper Brokenshire of Estevan, Saskatchewan, and his steer Mamba. 5 steers in this class, and they range in weight from 1360 to 1375, so only 15 pounds difference from top to bottom of the 5 steers in class number 5. Now comments on this fifth split of junior steers, Judge Colton Hamilton.
Steer we're going to lead off with, I think, just, again, the most complete steer that we're going to find in this class. He's not the flashiest steer, but I think he's the steer. He's the boldest sprung through his rib. I think he's the steer. He's got the most finish in the class. He's got an adequate amount of muscle to him. Just a really good, solid steer. He's not, like I said, the flashiest of the steers, but I think these top two steers, they just come together in terms of the steers that do a lot of things well. The steer we follow him up with, this silver steer, I think in terms of their type, I think they're quite similar steers. The silver steer, as you get behind him, like I say, he just doesn't have the spring through his rib as this first place steer does. He's just not quite as strong down through his stifle and his twist. But I think a steer that we definitely appreciate him. I think he follows suit well with this first place steer. I think just two solid calves to lead off the class. Steer in third is definitely the most eye-appealing steer. I really like him up through his front end. He's really attractive made. He's got some hip to him. Just like to see this steer stronger up in through his forerib to compete with the steers up above him today. Like to see a little bit more stifle and lower quarter to him to compete with that top steer, but I think definitely a steer we appreciate for the style and the type that he has. Young lady with the tan steer next. Actually, both of these two steers that round out the class. Steers we just like to have themselves handle. We like to have them handle themselves a little better in terms of finish. Steers are just still a little bit raw yet. I think this tan steer, he's a balanced steer. I think we definitely do like. He's got some hip to him. The steer that's going to round out the class, real long spine. He's got some muscle. But like I say, these last two steers just need to have more finish on them here today to get any higher in this class. But another solid group here.
Thank you, Colton. And so in Group 5, first place goes to entry 32, Eric Smith from Mankota, Saskatchewan, and his steer Diesel. Second in class was entry 6, Cooper Brokenshire from Estevan, Saskatchewan, and his steer Mamba. Third in class was entry 37, Wasey Townsend. Fourth in class, Emily Yaremko. And fifth in class, Lyndon Hasty. We now move to Group 6, the sixth split. We should have 6 entries in this class, and they are led in by entry 22, Austin Krieger from Jansen, Saskatchewan, and his steer Ted. Followed by show number 23, Blade Lehman from Lashburn, Saskatchewan, and Mr. Chilada. Entry 41 is Carter Wood from Beaver County, Alberta, and his steer Stu. Entry 26 is the entry from London Matthews of Olds, Alberta, and her steer Milkshake. Show number 9 is the entry from Will Davies of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, and his steer Copper. Show number 3 is the entry from Colt Blacklock of Dundurn, Saskatchewan, and his steer Ron Burgundy. 6 entries in this class, ladies and gentlemen. The heaviest steer is 1425. The light steer in this class, 1380. So the first steer to enter the ring is 1380, and the last steer weighing 1425. Split 6 of our 7 splits of junior steers.
the driving rain, found John's out hitting on the liquor again. It wasn't too late, about 10:30 when he let loose with the cat dragged in. It was a Sunday. And then morning came in, morning when he tried to make me pay the rent. Said, I ain't got no money for you, can I pay my way with these dancing shoes? Thought I was kidding.
Ladies and gentlemen, apparently there's a black GMC Yukon that has somebody blocked in. She assures me that she's not leaving the show. She just needs to move her vehicle. But a black GMC Yukon with Alberta plate BWP 2714 is blocking in a vehicle. So if you wouldn't mind moving your vehicle, that's a black Yukon with Alberta plate BWP 2714.
Brother, what you owe me, I can't count on anymore, till the police come and knocking on our door. We'll be burning down the house.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, comments on split number 6 of our steers, Judge Colton Hamilton.
Well, I apologize we took a little bit longer on this class. I think 3 really tremendous steers we have at the top of the class. We've got some difference and some variance between them. And, you know, as we look at this black steer that's going to lead off, I think really like the length that he has, really like the expression that he has over his top. He doesn't quite have the lower quarter and stifle that the second place steer has. I think where this steer excels over the second place steer today, he's just a little bit fresher coming to us, a little bit nicer up through his front end. I think just has a bit of a fresher look. You know, we'd like to maybe free both of these top 2 steers up a little bit when we get them traveling, but I think, you know, they're coming close enough to hitting their stride. And I think this first steer, he's just a really well balanced, nicely made steer. Like I said, we like the length that he has to him, really like the shape that he has over his top. He's got a nice hip, just a really solid steer. Steer in second, absolute powerhouse in terms of hip and hip shape. He gets a little bit tighter wound in through his shoulder, or in behind his shoulder and his heart girth. I think, again, maybe not quite as fresh coming to us today as the steer that's in first, but I think still a steer that we really appreciate for the amount of muscle and mass. You know, these 2 steers, when you get your hands on them, there's not really that much difference. In terms of in finish on them, you know, the first place steer does look a little bit fresher of the 2, but still handles well enough to be leading off this class. Young man with this red steer in third, I think this is a steer I really liked. I liked him when he came in. As he started to stand and as the class went along, he's a little bit of a wastier steer than the top 2 steers that we have. He's a little bit shorter in through his hip. He doesn't quite have the length of his rib. You know, I really do like this steer, the softness to him in the middle that he has. I think he's got an ample amount of finish to him. A really complete, really soggy steer, a different type of steer than the steers at the top of the class, but still, young man did a great job with this red steer. Steer that we have next here, tan steer that's walking out of the ring. I think a steer, again, you handle him, he handles just fine. He just doesn't quite have the class to him as the steers above him. He just doesn't quite have the shape in through his forerib as the steer directly in front of him, but I think still a good solid steer. The steer that we have, the black steer with the white socks, coming in next, really long spine steer again. A steer that he just gets a little bit plainer over his top. You get in behind him, he just starts to tail off a little bit in terms of his hip. If we could just level him out a little bit more in terms of hip structure, I think that would help him a lot, but still a steer we appreciate. Steer that's coming in at the bottom of the class, deep rib type of a steer, just doesn't quite have the hip or the muscle or the overall dimension the steers at the top of the class have, but a really strong class here, 3 excellent individuals at the top of it.
Thanks, Colton. First place in this split, entry 3, Colt Blacklock from Dundurn, Saskatchewan, and his steer, Ron Burgundy. Second in class was entry 26, London Matthews from Olds, Alberta, with Milkshake. Third in class was entry 22, Austin Krieger. Fourth in class, number 9, Will Davies. Fifth in class, 41, Carter Wood. Sixth in class, entry 23, Blade Lehman. Moving into the 7th and final group of junior steers, led in by entry 25, Leah Libke from Dunduran, Saskatchewan, win her steer Charlie. Followed by entry 34, Cheyenne Simmons from Claresholm, Alberta, with Blue. Show number 10 is J.C. Duchuk from Cochrane, Alberta, with Yodi 2.0. Show number 11 is the entry from Kaylor Eaton of Lloydminster, Alberta, with Barrett. Entry number 4 is Waylon Blacklock from Dunduran, Saskatchewan, with Ricky Bobby. And rounding out this final split, entry 14, Carson Friesen from Rocky View County, and his steer Lefty. 6 entries in this final split 7 of junior steers. From there, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving into our championship class, where we'll bring back the top 2 from all of our previous classes. The 7th and final class of steers, the lightest steer in this class, the first in the ring, 1445, the heaviest steer weighing 1600.
Some time in a backwoods town, ain't nothing to do 'cause there ain't nothing around. Deputy sheriff ran around the block, but the streets are empty and the doors are locked. Got pretty lonely. And that preacher there, King rang my bell, told me a little about heaven and a lot about hell. Said I ain't got no money for you, can I pay my way with these dancing shoes? Thought I was kidding. I was not kidding. Father, Father, what you owe me, I can't count on anymore, till the angels come and knock in on our door. We'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground, burn it up, tear it down, burning down the house. Woo! Outside is mad and cold. You don't grow up, you just grow old. Soon it's over, so they say, but God Almighty, till that day, we'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground, burn it up, tear it down, burning down the house. We'll be burning down the house, tear it to the ground. Tear it down, burning down the house.
tell you a little something about me. When it's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I've been holding in since the clock ain't much morning. From the end of the week, I'm about to blow. We're walking through the honky tonk like a pack of wolves now. Order of a round of shots, and it's away we go. It's a go down, get down. Order of another round of shots. Gonna get drunk, get some have fun, get into some trouble, baby, like it or not. I'm a Jim Beam drinking, big drink, singing la 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 la, dancing machine. Been a hell of a week, and I need to blow off some steam. Look at those. Got to blow off some steam for blow up. I got to blow off some steam for blow up. I've been holding it in through the whole work week. Now it's Saturday night and I'm about to blow. So come on now, man, and play me none of them slow songs. I need boots, and bar, burning hell, raising, get up and go songs. But give me something hot, just give me all you got. Now let's give old Luke Miller a try. Go ahead. Well, let's just go down, get down, order up another round of shots. Gonna get drunk, get some, have fun, get into some trouble, baby, like it or not. I'm a Jim Beam drinking, big drink, singing la 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 la, dance machine. Been a hell of a week, and I need to blow off some steam. Got to blow off some steam for a blow up. I got to blow off some steam for a blow up. I got to blow off some steam for a blow up. I got to blow off some steam for a blow up. I've been holding it in through the whole work week. Now it's Saturday night and I'm about to blow. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam. It's Saturday night, I need to blow off some steam.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, comments on split number 7 of our junior steers, Judge Colton Hamilton.
Well, I think two individuals here that I really impressed with. You know, a pair of steers that were in our heaviest class, but they're steers that probably can get out and travel as well as any steers we've seen today. They're steers that have some structural soundness to them. This black steer, just an extremely complete, well-made steer. I really like the top that he's got in him. I think he's got some length of body to him. He's maybe a little bit longer hipped than the steer in second. He probably has a bit more finish on him than the steer in second. The steer in second still has enough, but this steer leading off just has a tick more finish to him. I think just a tick more complete. I like the length that he's got into his hip. I like the shape that he's got through his body. He's got enough depth of rib, but not to the point where he's waisty. I think just a really complete steer. Steer that we have in second with the young lady, this is extremely close placing between the two. This steer is probably as big a top steer as we've had in the show here today. I think this steer, you know, really like him from the profile. Again, he's soft made. He maybe just doesn't quite have the length to his hip, like I said, of that first place steer. Maybe not quite the finish, maybe not quite as has nice up through his front end as the first place steer, but still an excellent steer here coming in second. The young man with the steer here in third, he just run into a pretty tough pair above him here. I think this is a steer, really big top steer, big hip steer. I think steer, he gets a little bit waistier than the two steers that are above him. He doesn't quite have the shape down through his stifle and lower quarters, the steers above him. Just not quite the soft appearance, but I think a steer that, like I said, I really like that steer, the muscle he has over his top through his forearm. Next steer that we have here, heaviest steer that we have in the show, a steer that he handles himself well, a steer that in terms of top and muscle, he's a really solid steer. Doesn't have the class as the two steers that are going to be at the top of the class here today, just not quite the presence to him, but I think this is still a steer that we appreciate for just the muscle that he has, the finish that he has. Young lady with the next steer here, the tan steer, a real nice steer from the profile. He's a balanced steer when you look at him from the profile. You get behind, he's just not as impressive as those steers that you got up above him in the class. Doesn't quite excuse me, handle himself as well as the couple of steers that are at the top of the class. I'd like to see him get out and travel a little bit better again, especially compared to those two top steers. Young man with the steer that we're going to round the class off with here. He's a steer just a little bit wastier up through his front end, a steer that doesn't quite have the expression over his top as the steers we had at the top of the class, but a steer with some length of body. Extremely impressive class here for our heavyweights.
Thank you, Colton. And so in our 7th and final split, first place was entry 11, Kaylor Eaton from Lloydminster, Alberta, with his steer Barrett. Second in class, entry 34, Cheyenne Simmons from Claresholm, Alberta, with her steer Blue. Third was entry 4, Waylon Blacklock. Fourth in class was entry 14, Carson Friesen. And fifth in class was 25, Leah Libke. Sixth in class, entry number 10, JC Duchik. We now, ladies and gentlemen, move to our champion drive, and we'll bring back the top two steers from each class. Ladies and gentlemen, the champion drive of the 2021 Junior Steer Classic. From Split 1, first place there was entry 24, Jaron Lehman from Lashburn, Saskatchewan with Tundra. Second in our first split was entry 16, Bailey Hasty from Langley, BC, and her steer Benny. Followed in. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. We're bringing on all our first places first. So actually following Jaron Lehman, the second steer in is entry 7, the winner of Split 2, from Lauren Boost of Waldeck, Saskatchewan with Little Wayne. Followed in by the winner of Split 3, Entry 30, Cord Phillips from Wassetna, Alberta with Rayman. Followed in by the winner of Split 4, Entry 40, the steer from Kaylee Wersta of Elk Point, Alberta, and Hoosier. From Split 5, Entry 32 from Eric Smith of Mancota, Saskatchewan, and his steer Diesel. From Split number 6, first place there was Entry 3, Colt Blacklock from Dundurn, Saskatchewan, with Ron Burgundy. And from our final split, Entry 11, the steer from Kaylor Eaton of Lloydminster, Alberta, his steer Barrett. And they were then followed in by our second places from each split. And so from Group 1, second in that split was Entry 16, Bailey Hasty from Langley, BC. From Group 2, second place was entry number 5, Casey Brokenshire from Estevan, Saskatchewan, and her steer Peanut. From Split 3, second place was entry 19, Lily Howell from Penhold, Alberta, with Double D. In Split 4, second place was entry 29, Riley Pashelka from Derwent, Alberta, and his steer Hank. In Group 5, second place went to entry 6, Cooper Brokenshire from Estevan, Saskatchewan, and her steer Mamba. In Group 6, second place was entry 26, London Matthews from Olds, Alberta, and her steer Milkshake. Seventh in class was, in the seventh class, second place was entry 34, Cheyenne Simmons from Claresholm, Alberta, and her steer Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, the 14 steers in our champion drive of the 2021 Junior Livestock Calgary Stampede Livestock Show. At this time, as we have all of our champion steers in the ring, ladies and gentlemen, in this champion drive, I think now is a time for us to put our hands together, thank the Calgary Stampede Board of Directors and the Steer Committee for getting our juniors back in the ring. Juniors and ladies and gentlemen, also at this time, I'd like to bring to your attention, if you're not aware, the young fella, little guy that's been behind the camera today is Ty Dietrich from Ag Plus Designs, and so Ty was the one the steer committee has got for picturing today. So anybody who would like any pictures at the backdrop or candids that Ty's been taking throughout the day, you can stop by the backdrop or take a look at www.agplusdesign.com, where the pictures will be posted on their website, or just stop by and talk to Ty or Shania at the backdrop. So there will be pictures up on the website later and available, and anyone that would like, drop by the backdrop for a photograph with your steer.
I'll wait to see your golden smile, feel of 1,000 kisses. Oh, please stay a while. I reach up to hold your sunlit face. Feels like a handful of silk now. I'm in your warm embrace.
So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, in our champion drive here in random order, our judge, Colton Hamilton, will be pulling his top 6 steers, totally in random order, ladies and gentlemen. So those will be our 6 finalists. Not by any means does it mean anything. It's a total random order as Judge Colton Hamilton now goes to work pulling his top 6 steers. So ladies and gentlemen, we are down to our 6 finalists, and they include from Group 3, entry 30, Cord Phillips. From Class 4, we have entry 40, the steer from Kaylee Wersta. From class number 6, we have entry number 3, Colt Blacklock. And also from class number 6, entry 26, London Matthews. And from group 7, entry 11, Kayla Eaton. And also from group 7, entry 34, Cheyenne Simmons. Ladies and gentlemen, our 6 finalists in our 2021 Calgary Junior Livestock Steer Show.
Captured by your charm, enchanted by your ways, in the magic of your eyes, I've become lost in their spell. So come closer, my dear, because all is well. Oh, I hope this feeling lasts till the oceans turn to glass and the world around us turns and fades to black. Together we'll look back the sun in this.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, comments from our judge, Mr. Colton Hamilton.
Well, thank you, Bill. Before we get into this champion steer class, first of all, I'd like to thank the ringmen, the marshals, Bill and Ryan, Mark, everybody who's been working here today to help the show run smoothly. They've done a really great job. I also, the sponsors, the Calgary Stampede, the ORE, the people who committed to putting this on, I think we really need to commend them as well. You know, this has been obviously a trying year, and for them to come through, I think that is something that definitely is commendable. So thank you very much to them. For these exhibitors that we have, these exhibitors that are in the ring right now, all these exhibitors have passed through the ring. I think it's been a tremendous show in terms of quality. I've been really impressed with what we've had. You know, and I think we need to definitely tip our hats to these exhibitors and their parents and their siblings. You know, when they started out with these steers was back in maybe October, November, December. You know, if you think back to then, they didn't know if there was going to be a 4-H show, if there was going to be a jackpot show, if there was going to be a Calgary Stampede. They didn't know what there was. It took a leap of faith for these young people to grab these steers and to put the time in and put the effort in, and I think we definitely need to commend them. The easy thing to do through all of this is just to pack up and squirrel away and, you know, just wait for next year, but these people didn't do that. They stepped up and they put in the work. You know, there was a chance that they put in all these hours and nothing was to come of it, so I think that shows a lot of dedication on behalf of, you know, these people and their families, and I think we really need to commend them for that. As we may give them a round of applause, I think. As we look at these steers in our championship drive, and like I said throughout the show, I think we've had an extremely impressive group. The numbers in terms of quantity haven't been huge, but I think the quality has been extremely strong from top to bottom, right from our lightest class on through to the heaviest. I think as we look at these steers that we've got in our championship 6 or our final 6, I think we can hopefully see a lot of similarity to them. These are steers that they've got some top to them and some muscle shape. They're steers that have some mass and some stoutness, some length of body, still trying to combine that with some structural soundness, some eye appeal. I think when we look at these steers phenotypically, I think we see 6 individuals that are really strong, and they're what I was hoping that we would find here today. You know, I say phenotypically, this is a market steer show. You know, these steers do have an ample amount of finish. The one thing, when Katie asked if I wanted to judge the show, I half-jokingly told her I was going to bring an ultrasound tech to ultrasound these steers to get an IMF measurement and a ribeye size. She didn't think that my revolutionary idea was that great. But I think, you know, as we've been looking at these steers, we're trying to pinpoint them where they fit into the marketplace. You know, we can tell these steers have finish to them. I've tried to refrain today from saying I think this steer will grade better than that steer, et cetera, because in all honesty, we don't really know once we get into looking at these steers, once you peel the hide back. The difference from a prime carcass to a AAA carcass, a lot of that is going to have to do with breed composition, with the genetic ability of that animal. You know, we don't know that, so we're speculating, and we're trying to find steers that we still think have an ample amount of finish. You know, same goes for yield. We're looking for steers that we think are going to have a yield. I know in our own operation over the last few years, we've taken on a lot more interest and done a lot more research into trying to you know, help our customers be profitable no matter when their cattle are selling, if it's off the cow or right as finished cattle, and actually by feeding some more cattle out ourselves. And so, you know, we're looking for a carcass obviously that has a yield. I can tell you from experience, 2 weeks ago we had a lot of steers go. There was one yield grade 3 in the group, the rest were yield grade 2s, and to look at them, you would never have picked that steer as the yield grade 3. So, you know, for me to stand here and say this steer's a 1 and a 3, you know, I refrain from doing that as well. I think these steers that we have in our championship class, I think they're all tidy enough, trim enough, they've got enough rib and enough top and enough shape that these are steers that are going to yield. I think, you know, we talk about carcass weight, you know, as we've gone, we've got a few of the heavier steers out here in the championship class. I'm not going to stand here and say a steer has to be this carcass weight or has to be that carcass weight. Actually, we get the Cattlenomics emails every week with different data. The average carcass weight of a steer that was harvested in Western Canada last week of July was 848 pounds. That translates to about a 1,415 pound live weight if you take a 60% yield. Year to date, the average weight is 897 pounds. That would work out to a 1,495 pound live weight. I'm not saying that that's the weight that they absolutely have to be, but I think we have steers here that are, you know, within the industry standard of what we're looking at for carcass weight. You know, carcass weight is a double-edged sword. We want more product. If you have a certain number of hooks, you want to have a lot more product, but also sometimes as you have bigger carcass, more carcass weight, sometimes, you know, I've talked to numerous people. We've hosted events for certified Angus beef at our place, and you talk to restaurant owners and chefs, and marbling is their key. That's the most important thing to them, but sometimes carcass weight, a ribeye can be too big. You have to cut a ribeye too slim of slices or of pieces to fit your 8 or 10 ounce ribeye. So the point of what I'm saying here is that the cattle industry and raising cattle, it takes a lot of balance. It's not easy. There's so many factors that factor into raising cattle, whether it's commercial cattle, purebred cattle, finishing cattle, right through to the end. What we've been trying to do here, what I've been trying to do here today, is find cattle that I think are the most balanced, that do the most things well. I think we've got 6 steers here that have really fit the description of what I've been looking for. Thank you again to the Steer Show Committee for asking me out here today. It's definitely been an honor for me and a privilege, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. With that, we'll go out and pick a champion in reserve.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Colton Hamilton for spending his day adjudicating our steer show. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I'd once again like to reintroduce our Stampede directors, Mr. Dave Lance, Tracy Zeal, Kerry Griffith, Paul Cavanaugh, new CEO, Joel Cowley, and the committee chairs, Kerry Gordon and Brad Mason from the Calgary Stampede. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause. Also, one more thank you to our ringmen for the day, Mr. Scott Borison, Miss Katie Songer, and Miss Megan Black. Grand champion steer, ladies and gentlemen, entry 11, Keeler Eaton from Lloydminster, Alberta, is Steer Barrett, weighing 1480. Reserve champion steer, entry 34, Cheyenne Simmons from Claresholm, Alberta, her steer Blue, weighing 1460. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending, and once again, thank you to the Calgary Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth. We now will have Mr. Colton Hamilton pick 3rd place. Our 3rd place steer is entry number 3, Holt Blacklock from Dunderrin, Saskatchewan. 4th place goes to entry 26, London Matthews from Olds, Alberta. Fifth place, entry 30, Cord Phillips from Wassetna, Alberta. And our 6th place steer, entry 40 from Kaylee Wursta of Elk Point, Alberta. Ladies and gentlemen, one last round of applause for all the juniors exhibiting steers at the 2021 show.
Well, congratulations goes out to our champions on a great show here for the Calgary Stampede Junior Steer Classic in 2021. Grand champion going to show number 11, Kaylor Eaton from Lloydminster, Saskatchewan. Congratulations on that great steer. Reserve grand champion is going to come out of the same class, entry number 34, Cheyenne Simmons from Claresholm, Alberta, with her blue steer. So congratulations to our grand and reserve grand champion here for the Calgary Stampede Junior Steer Classic. We appreciate everyone being with us for 2021. We look forward to seeing everyone next year. Remember, guys, we're back here Wednesday to Saturday for the Summer Synergy. Great to be part of the ORE, Calgary Stampede, and Alberta 4-H as we bring you Summer Synergy 2021. We look forward to being back here with everyone. Have a great summer, guys. We'll talk to you down the road.